Chapter 5. The Passes. The sustained grandeur of the High Sierra is strikingly illustrated by the great height of the passes. Between the latitude 36 degrees 20 and 38 degrees, the lowest pass, gap, gorge, or notch of any kind cutting across the axis of the range, as far as I have discovered, exceeds 9,000 feet in height above the height of the sea. While the average height of all that are in use, either by Indians or whites, is perhaps not less than 11,000 feet, and not one of these is Carriage Pass. Further north, a carriage road has been constructed through what is known as the Sonora Pass. On the headwaters of the Salinas and Walker's rivers, the summit of which is about 10,000 feet above the sea, substantial wagon roads have also been built through the Carson and Johnson passes near the head of Lake Tahoe, over which immense quantities of freight were hauled from California to the mining regions of Nevada before the construction of the Central Pacific Railroad. Still farther north, a considerable number of comparatively low passes occur, some of which are accessible to wheeled vehicles, and though these rugged defiles during the exciting years of the gold period, long emigrant trains with footsore cattle wearily towed, after the toil-worn adventurers had escaped 1,000 dangers and crawled over 1,000 miles across the plains, the snowy Sierra at last loomed in sight, the eastern wall of the land of gold, and as with shaded eyes they gazed through the tumultuous haze of the desert, with what joy must they have decreed the path through which they were about to enter the better land of their hopes and dreams. Between the Sonora Pass and the southern extremity of the High Sierra, a distance of nearly 160 miles, there are only 5 passes through which trails could conduct from one side of the range to the other. These are barely practicable for animals. A pass in these regions meaning simply any notch or canyon through which one may, by the exercise of unlimited patience, make out to lead a mule or a sure-footed Mustang. Animals that can slide or jump as well as they walk. Only 3 of the 5 passes may be said to be in use, viz. The patients make out to lead a mule, Kearsarge, Mono, and Virginia Creek, the tracks leading through the others being only obscure Indian trails, not graded in the least, and scarcely traceable by white man, for much of the way is over solid rock and earthquake avalanche Toulouse, where the unshod ponies of the Indians have no appreciable sign. Only skilled mountaineers are able to detect the marks that serve to guide the Indians, such as slight abrasions of the looser rock, the displacement of stones here and there, bent bushes and weeds. A general knowledge of the topography is then their main guide, enabling one to determine where the trail ought to must go. One of these Indian trails crosses the range by a nameless pass between head rivers of the south and middle forks of San Joaquin. The others, between the north and middle forks of the same river, just go to the south of the minarets. This last, being about 9,000 feet high, is the lowest of the 5. The Kearsarge is the highest, crossing the summit near the head of the south fork of the Kings River, about 8 miles to the north of Mount Tidal. Through the midst of the most stupendous rock scenery, the summit of this pass is over 12,000 feet above sea level. Nevertheless, it is one of the safest of the 5, and is used every summer, from July to October or November. by hunters, prospectors, and stock owners, and to some extent by enterprising pleasure seekers also. For being besides their surpassing grandeur, the scenery of the summit, the trail, in ascending the western flank of the range, conducts through a grove of the giant sequoias, and through the magnificent Yosemite Valley of the South Fork of Kings River. That is perhaps the highest traveled pass on the North American continent. The Mono Pass lies to the east of the Yosemite Valley at the head of one of the tributaries of the South Fork of Tuolumne. This is best known and most extensively traveled of all that exist in the High Sierra. A trail was made through it about the time of the Mono Gold excitement, and in the year 1858 by an adventurous group miners, prospectors, men who would build a trail down to the throat of the darkest Erebus on the way to gold. Though more than 1,000 feet lower than at Kearsarge, it is scarcely less sublime in rock scenery, while in snowy, falling water it is far surpasses it, being so favorably situated for the stream of Yosemite travel. The more adventurous tourists cross over through this glorious gateway to the volcanic regions around Mono Lake. It has therefore gained a name and fame of every other pass in the range. According to the few barometrical observations made upon it, its highest point is 10,765 feet above the sea. The other pass of the 5 we have been considering is somewhat lower, and crosses the axis of the range a few miles to the north of the Mono Pass. At the head of the southernmost tributary of the Walker's Rivers, it is used chiefly by roaming bands of the Paiute Indians and sheepmen. But leaving wheels and animals out of the question, the free mountaineer with a sack of bread on his shoulder and an axe to cut steps in ice and frozen snow can make his way across the range almost anywhere. And at any time of year when the weather is calm to him, nearly every notch between the peaks is a pass. Though much patient step cutting is at times required up and down steeply inclined glaciers, with cautious climbing over precipitous that at first sight would seem hopelessly inaccessible. In pursuing my studies, I have crossed from side to side of the range at intervals of a few miles all along the highest point of the chain, and with far less real danger than one would naturally count on. And what fine wilderness was thus revealed! Storms and avalanches, lakes and waterfalls, gardens and meadows, and interesting animals. Only those will ever know who give the freest and most buoyant portion of their lives to climbing and seeing for themselves. To the timid traveler fresh from the sedimentary levels of the lowlands, these highways, however picturesque and grand, seem terribly forbidding, cold, dead, gloomy gashes in the bones of the mountain. And of all nature's ways, the one to be cautiously avoided. Yet, they are full of the finest and most telling examples of nature's love. And though hard to travel, none are safer, for they lead through regions that lie far above the ordinary haunts of the devil, and of the pestilence that walks in the darkness. True, there are innumerable places where the careless step will be the last step, and a rock falling from the cliffs may crush without warning, like lightning from the sky. But what then? Accidents in the mountains are less common than in the lowlands, and these mountain mansions are decent, delightful, and even divine places to die in. Compared with the doleful chambers of civilization, few places in the world are more dangerous than home. Fear not. therefore to try the mountain passes. They will kill care, save you from deadly apathy, set you free, and call forth every faculty into vigorous, enthusiastic action. Even the sick should try these so-called dangerous passes, because for every unfortunate they kill, they cure 1,000.